Welcome to Swiss Institute. Thank you very much for joining us this evening for the Shifting Center, a panel discussion about how institutions collect and exhibit outsider art. Swiss Institute is hosting tonight's panel together with our friends at the Outsider Art Fair on the occasion of our exhibition of Hans Scherer's Madonnas and erotic watercolors. Scherer is often mischaracterized as an outsider artist, and though his work shares many common aesthetic elements and themes with those who are considered to be outsider artists, he was fully integrated into the creative community. Scherer's work was included, nonetheless, in the 16th Sao Paulo Biennial in 1981 as part of the outsider art contingent, but in the 21st century, his work has been re-examined. He was seen once in a group exhibition here in New York, curated by Ugo Rondinone at the Gladstone Gallery, but also he's come to be known by many more people through the inclusion of several of his Madonnas in Massimiliano's Venice Biennial in the section curated with Cindy Sherman. So using Scherer's complex relationship with marginality as a touchstone, tonight's conversation will focus on what defines an outsider artist and the possible incorporation of outsider art into the mainstream, if outsider art is, in fact, shifting from the margins to the center, how exactly is integration developing within institutions. So we're very lucky to be here tonight with a magnificent group of panelists featuring Dan Fox, Massimiliano Gioni, Jens Hoffmann, Amanda Hunt, and Chris Wiley, who is not only a celebrated artist and writer, but also the moderator of tonight's panel. And he will be introduced by Andrew Edlin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Simon. Welcome, everybody. It's a great crowd. We really appreciate it. We want to thank the Swiss Institute for hosting this event. We've been very busy all day setting up at the Outsider Art Fair, which I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you opens tomorrow at the Metropolitan Pavilion on 18th Street between 6th and 7th Avenue. I'd like to give special recognition to Becca Hoffmann, the fair director, who has coordinated literally everything, including this panel, and done a terrific job. Last night we kicked off Outsider Art Fair Week with our first panel discussion at the Neue House, and I wanted to thank our panelists and Priscilla Frank from the Huffington Post. I think it was a very intriguing event. Chris Wiley is an artist and writer. His writing has appeared in numerous exhibition catalogs and magazines, including Kaleidoscope, Moose, and Frieze, where he's a contributing editor. He's previously worked in a curatorial capacity on a variety of exhibitions at the New Museum in New York and was an assistant curator on the 8th Gwangju Biennial in 2010, as well as a curatorial advisor and chief catalog writer for the 55th Venice Biennale. Most recently, he curated the show Part Picture at MoCA Toronto as part of the Contact Photography Festival. His work has been recently seen in exhibitions at MoMA PS1, Hauser and Wirth, Marianne Boschi, and Nickel Beauchesne Gallery. I first met Chris in 2012 when he curated a show called Towards a Warm Math at On Stellar Rays. His knowledge of outsider art was very impressive, and soon thereafter, he was back in touch looking for more work, this time as a conduit for Massimiliano Gioni when he was putting together the 2013 Venice Biennale. A year later, he curated a show on Eugene von Brunkenhain at Macaron. So a pattern was clearly emerging to me, an insider guy who knows and loves outsider art. When I read his insightful article called Outside In Moose Magazine, I realized that Chris was a unique and articulate voice, especially for this moment we are now in here in the art world. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce tonight's moderator, Chris Wiley.
Thank you, Andrew, for the incredibly generous introduction, and thanks everybody for coming here tonight. I also want to thank Becca Hoffmann, who helped to make this possible, and everybody here at the Swiss Institute. First, I'm just going to introduce our panelists, and then have a brief introduction, and then we're going to sort of talk amongst ourselves, and then take some questions from all of you. So first we have Massimiliano Gioni, who is a curator and contemporary art critic and artistic director of the New Museum and the Fondazione Nicola Tussardi. He was the curator of the 55th Venice Biennale in 2013, as well as the 8th Gwangju Biennale in 2010, the Berlin Biennial in 2006, and a co-curator of Manifesta 5 in 2005. Amanda Hunt is an assistant curator at the Studio Museum in Harlem, where she has most recently curated a constellation. Hunt curated Portland 2014, a biennial of contemporary art, presented by the Disjecta Contemporary Art Center in Portland, Oregon, and was a curator at the nonprofit art space LAX Art from 2011 to 2014. Hunt helped to produce 2 major initiatives in Los Angeles, including the Pacific Standard Time Performance and Public Art Festival, co-produced by LAX Art and the Getty Research Institute, and Made in LA 2012, the first Los Angeles biennial organized by the Hammer Museum in collaboration with LAX Art. Dan Fox is the co-editor of Frieze magazine, a writer, musician, and occasionally a filmmaker. He is a visiting tutor at the Ruskin School of Art, Oxford University, and his writing has appeared in a range of artists' monographs and journals. He co-runs with the artists Andy Cook and Nathaniel Mellors the record label Junior Aspirin Records, and his new book, Pretentiousness, Why It Matters, will be published in the UK by Fitzcarraldo Editions on February 10th, and in the US by Coffee House Press on April 6th. Jens Hoffmann is a writer and exhibition maker. He is currently the deputy director of the Jewish Museum in New York, where he oversees exhibitions, collections, and public programs. Since 2013, he has also been the senior curator at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Detroit. Thank you all for joining us tonight. So by way of introduction, I'll read this short thing that I wrote. What has now become known as outsider art has been the object of fascination since at least 1922, when psychiatrist Hans Prinzhorn published his seminal book, Artistry of the Mentally Ill, which ended up on the bookshelves of such influential artistic figures as Paul Klee, Max Ernst, and Jean Dubuffet. Dubuffet, of course, became the genre's most vocal advocate, amassing the world's foremost collection of what he called art brut, art made by artists who had escaped the smothering influence of the established culture, which he famously dubbed the asphyxiating culture. But though Dubuffet was an advocate for art produced outside of the dominant cultural modes and educational systems, he was also a staunch defender of its continued separation, operating under the assumption that incursions of the market, of academia, or of cultural tastemakers would compromise the creative foundations on which art brut rested. In the past few years, we have seen an almost complete breakdown of the wall between insider and outsider art that Dubuffet sought to build. Outsider artists such as Adolf Wolfley, Henry Darger, Judith Scott, Thornton Dial, Martin Ramirez, Bill Traylor, and Eugene von Brunschenheim have achieved star status, exhibited in major museum exhibitions and biennials around the world, alongside the works of jet-setting art world insiders. Prominent critics have begun to call for the abolishment of the term outsider art altogether, calling it exclusionary and potentially meaningless. And, of course, the market for outsider art has been booming, as evidenced perhaps most prominently by the Outsider Art Fair, of which this panel is a part. Though I would think that no one here would argue for the kind of somewhat patronizing preservationist position that Dubuffet took, this shift towards the inclusion of outsider art in the mainstream brings up a number of thorny questions that have broad-reaching implications not only for outsider art and outsider artists, but also for the world of art as a whole, which hopefully now we're going to talk about. And so sort of just to get the conversation started, I wanted to get just a sense of how your various institutions deal with the acquisition or inclusion of outsider art, or, you know, in Dan's case, this writing about outsider art. And, you know, sort of what is your view and what is your position on that? We can start. I mean, we can start with anyone who wants to start. You decide. Okay, Massimiliano.
Well, the first issue is the word institution, that in this context can't avoid making me think of asylums, no? And so I don't know if it's the best metaphor. And actually, unfortunately, basically I only go to panels that are about outsider art. It's become a side gig, and I usually break the ice with a joke that, in a way, I think express how I feel about these categories. And it's the joke of the mental patient in an institution that is in his straitjacket, it's in his cell, and he's going crazy, and he's banging with his head against the door, and he's saying, open the door, are you crazy? You locked yourself inside. And so, that's obviously just a funny way, basically, to address what the question of the outsider poses towards institutions, and obviously, historically, the problem of the outsider is also tied to a history of